Black water fills the frame, an ocean without a horizon. No landmarks, no up or down, only suspended particles drifting like slow snow, and the pressure of miles of seawater pressing in from every direction. In this world, a body can be almost nothing, more suggestion than substance, and still dominate. A pale bell appears, barely thicker than a breath. It pulses once, gently, and the darkness reorganizes around it. Then the tentacles bloom outward, threads that are not quite threads, armed with microscopic weapons older than vertebrate bones. Somewhere above, storms churn and continents erode, but down here the rules are written in chemistry and time. Jellyfish have no bones, no blood, and no face to recognize, yet they hunt, sense, glow. Soans sometimes seem to cheat the most fundamental contract in biology, the one that says life moves in only one direction. Today, we're diving into why nothing about jellyfish is normal, and why their strangeness isn't an exception to evolution, but one of its most revealing expressions. The first surprise is that jellyfish is less a single kind of animal than a human shortcut. We use the word for drifting gelatin in the sea, but nature has been building jelly-like bodies in different lineages for hundreds of millions of years. The classic, true jellyfish. Scyphozoans like the moon jelly, Aurelia aurita, share the ocean with hydrozoans like the crystal jelly Echorea victoria, and with cubozoans, box jellyfish, whose behavior can feel unsettlingly deliberate. Each group arrives at a similar visual outcome, a floating bell and trailing tentacles. But the biology underneath is not one design. It is a set of evolutionary solutions that keep reappearing because the ocean rewards certain kinds of bodies. A jellyfish body is, in many ways, an argument against what we assume animals must be. There's no hard skeleton to leverage, no gills pumping oxygen through dense tissue. Instead, there is water, so much water that the animal is almost an extension of its environment. That is not a weakness, it is a strategy. Neutral buoyancy means you can drift with minimal energy cost. A body made mostly of water can grow large without investing in heavy, metabolically expensive tissue. In the open ocean, where food can be sparse and patchy, being cheap to build matters. And then there's the life cycle, already a kind of biological sleight of hand. A jellyfish isn't simply born as a smaller jellyfish. Many begin as a larva that settles onto a surface and becomes a polyp, a small, stalked animal, anchored and feeding like a tiny sea anemone. From that stationary form, the familiar medusa stage is produced, sometimes by budding, sometimes by a process called strobilation that slices the polyp into a stack of developing young. One animal becomes many. One body plan becomes another. It's not metamorphosis in the insect sense. It's more like a species living two lives, alternating between worlds, benthic and pelagic, each with different risks and rewards. In moon jellies, the medusa stage can bloom seasonally, turning coastal waters into living weather. In Aurelia, aurita, hem of the translucent bell carries 4 horseshoe-shaped gonads like pale brushstrokes, and its tentacles, fine and numerous, sweep plankton from the water. In a harbour at night, artificial lights draw zooplankton upward. The jellies follow, pulsing slowly in the glow, their bodies nearly invisible until they catch the light at the right angle. A creature that seems passive is, in reality, tuned to the physics of seawater and the movements of prey. This split life is also an insurance policy. If the drifting medusae are destroyed by storms, predators, or temperature shifts, the polyp stage can persist on docks, rocks, and pilings, quietly waiting. When conditions improve, it can release a new generation into the water column. The population can vanish from sight and still remain present, like an ecological seed bank clinging to the hard edges of the coast. But the deeper oddity is not the alternation itself. It's what it implies, that for these animals, an individual is not always a stable idea. Some jellyfish exist as colonies of genetically identical polyps. Some reproduce by producing multiple medusae from a single polyp body. In evolutionary terms, this flexibility is a way of turning time and space into allies, shifting form to match opportunity. If jellyfish are built to drift, they are also built to strike. Their signature weapon is not a tooth or claw, but a cell, an entire cell dedicated to violence at microscopic scale. Cnidarians, the larger group that includes jellyfish, corals, and sea anemones, are defined by cnidocytes, stinging cells packed with organelles called nematocysts. Each nematocyst is a capsule under extreme internal pressure, holding a coiled tubule like a spring-loaded harpoon. When triggered by touch, chemicals, or both, the capsule opens and the tubule everts outward with astonishing speed, puncturing and delivering venom into prey. The mechanism is so elegant, so biomechanically precise, that it has become a model system for understanding how nature builds ultra-fast devices out of soft tissue. Under the microscope, a tentacle is not a simple filament. It is an armed landscape. Thousands of cnidocytes line the surface, each one a single-use weapon. For a small fish larva or a copepod, contact is catastrophe, paralysis, disruption of membranes, rapid collapse of movement. For a human swimmer, a brush against certain species can mean pain, welts, and in the case of the most dangerous box jellies, even potentially fatal cardiovascular effects. The terrifying part is not that jellyfish have venom, it's that they don't need a brain to deploy it. The triggering mechanism sits at the edge of the cell itself, like a hair trigger wired into chemistry. And evolution has iterated on this system for an incomprehensibly long time. Cnidocytes represent an evolutionary novelty, one that likely contributed to the success of cnidarians as predators in early oceans. Even today, the diversity of nematocyst types across species hints at an arms race that plays out in miniature. Different capsule shapes, different tubule architectures, different venom cocktails, each tuned to a particular ecology and prey field. But if jellyfish can hunt without a centralized brain, how do they sense a world that is constantly moving? The answer is another layer of not normal, distributed intelligence. Most jellyfish have nerve nets, webs of neurons spread through the body rather than concentrated into a head. The bell contracts rhythmically, coordinated by pacemaker regions. Touch a tentacle, and the response can propagate without anything resembling a command center. It is not conscious thought. It is a different engineering principle, control distributed across the body. Then evolution pushes that principle further into territory that unsettles our expectations of simple animals. Box jellyfish do not merely react to light and shadow. Some can see. In the warm shallows of mangrove lagoons, where roots form a tangled maze and sunlit water flickers with reflections, the box jellyfish Tripedalia cystophora swims with purpose. It does not drift like a moon jelly. It navigates. Along the edges of its cube-shaped bell are 4 sensory structures called ropalia. Each ropalium bears 6 eyes, 24 in total. Some of these are simple light sensors, but 2 on each rhopalium are camera-type lens eyes capable of forming images. In a creature with no centralized brain, image-forming eyes feel almost impossible. Yet, they are real, and experiments show these animals use visual cues, like the contrast of mangrove canopies, to steer and maintain position in habitats where currents could otherwise sweep them away. The story gets stranger. In recent years, researchers have reported evidence that Tripidalia cystophora can perform a form of associative learning, adjusting behavior based on experience, linking visual patterns with outcomes. The finding doesn't turn a jellyfish into a thinker like a mammal, but it forces the question: how much computation can a nerve net do when it is paired with sophisticated sensory organs? How much brain can be distributed? And elsewhere in the tropics, the stakes become lethal. The box jellyfish Chironex fleckeri, notorious in northern Australian waters, carries long tentacles with dense fields of nematocysts that can deliver a powerful venom. Here, the jellyfish body plan, soft, drifting, apparently fragile, houses one of the most dangerous envenomation systems in the sea. The evolutionary logic is not malice, it is efficiency. A fast, immobilizing venom allows a fragile predator to capture active prey without a struggle that would tear it apart. Vision, venom, and distributed neural control. Already, the jellyfish violates the stereotype of an ancient, primitive blob. But perhaps the most famous violation is not about hunting or sensing, it's about time. In laboratories and aquaria, a small hydrozoan jellyfish, just a few millimeters across, has revealed a biological maneuver that sounds like mythology until you watch it happen. Turritopsis dawni, often called the immortal jellyfish, can reverse its life cycle under stress. When injured, starved, or otherwise threatened, the adult medusa can collapse, settle, and transform into a mass of tissue that reorganizes into a polyp colony. From those polyps, new medusae can bud, genetically the same individual, but developmentally reset. This is not resurrection in a mystical sense. It is cellular reprogramming, specialized cells changing identity, a process often described as transdifferentiation. The phrase immortal is both accurate and misleading. It is accurate in the narrow biological sense. The usual one-way trajectory from youth to adulthood to senescence can be rerouted. It is misleading because the jellyfish is not invulnerable. Predators still eat it. Disease can still kill it. It can still die from the ordinary hazards of being small and edible in the sea. But as an existence proof, a demonstration that aging pathways are not fixed laws across all animals, it is extraordinary. Scientists have begun to ask, what genes and cellular systems make this possible? Comparative genomics has examined Turritopsis dawni alongside close relatives that do not show the same capacity for repeated rejuvenation, searching for differences in DNA repair, cell cycle regulation, and stress response pathways that might support this reversal. The work is careful, incremental, and full of uncertainty, because connecting genes to such a complex developmental phenomenon is never straightforward. But the direction is clear. The immortal jellyfish is not magic. It is evolution exploiting developmental plasticity in a lineage where life cycles already involve dramatic shapeshifting between polyp and medusa. Even the more familiar jellyfish hint at the genetic machinery underlying these transformations. The moon jelly. Aurelia aurita has been used to explore how the same genome can produce radically different bodies across life stages, anchored polyp and swimming medusa, through shifts in gene expression. The jellyfish isn't simply simple, it is modular, reconfigurable, and deeply dependent on developmental switches that can be thrown in different directions depending on conditions. Then, or in the dim mid-waters and along the Pacific coasts, jellyfish add another violation of normality. They glow, not as a decorative trait, but as chemistry and ecology intertwined. The crystal jelly Aquaria victoria is famous because its proteins transformed biology. Disturb it, and it can produce flashes of blue light, driven by a calcium-activated photoprotein called aquarin. In its tissues, another molecule, green fluorescent protein, GFP, absorbs that blue light and re-emits it as green. In the 20th century, the extraction and study of these proteins led to a cascade of scientific tools that now allow researchers to tag genes, track cells, and watch developmental processes in living organisms. A drifting hydrozoan, nearly invisible in seawater, becomes a cornerstone of modern molecular biology. In the ocean, bioluminescence and fluorescence serve ambiguous purposes, startling predators, attracting prey, signaling, or simply being a biochemical byproduct pressed into ecological service. The uncertainty is part of the story. In deep water, where sunlight dies and vision depends on emitted light, the ability to generate flashes can be defensive. An instant of confusion in a place where confusion can mean survival. But the same chemistry, lifted into laboratories, becomes a window into the living cell, revealing patterns we could never otherwise see. And yet, for all the fascination with immortality and glowing proteins, the most consequential jellyfish story may be unfolding not in the microscope, but in the changing ocean. In some regions, jellyfish blooms, sudden, dense population explosions, have become more frequent or more visible, like entangling fishing gear, clogging industrial water intakes, and reshaping food webs. The reasons are not always simple. Jellyfish respond to temperature, nutrients, currents, oxygen levels, and predation pressure. Human activity can tilt several of these variables at once. Consider the Black Sea in the late 20th century, where an invasive comb jelly, Monimiopsis lydii, arrived, likely via ballast water. Technically, it is not a true jellyfish at all, but a ctenophore, another gelatinous lineage that evolved a different kind of predation. Its invasion, combined with overfishing and nutrient loading, contributed to ecosystem upheaval. Zooplankton communities were hammered, fish larvae declined, and the balance of the sea shifted. Gelatinous animals, so easy to dismiss as fragile, can become dominant when the usual constraints are removed. The broader concept is sometimes framed in dramatic terms: an ocean where jellies replace fish. Reality is more complex, varying by region and species. Warmer water can speed up growth and reproduction for some jellyfish, but only if food is available. Overfishing can remove competitors and predators, indirectly favoring jellyfish in certain systems. Coastal development adds hard surfaces, docks, seawalls, pilings that can serve as new habitat for polyp stages, quietly increasing the capacity for future blooms. Eutrophication can alter plankton communities, changing what food is available and when. None of these drivers acts alone. They combine, and jellyfish, already built for opportunism, can exploit the new conditions. And even in death, jellyfish refuse to be irrelevant. when blooms collapse. Enormous amounts of gelatinous biomass can sink to the seafloor in events known as jelly falls. For decades, the assumption was that jellyfish are nutritionally trivial, too watery to matter. But deep-sea observations and experiments show scavengers consume jellyfish carcasses rapidly, and that this gelatinous rain can deliver carbon and nutrients to ecosystems far below the surface. In a deep ocean, where food arrives as a slow snowfall of detritus, a jellyfall is a sudden feast. So the jellyfish body plan, cheap to build, capable of rapid population growth, able to slip between life stages, can amplify environmental changes. It can become a signal. Not an omen in a mystical sense, but a biological indicator that the system's controls are shifting. And that returns us to the title's deeper claim. Nothing about jellyfish is normal, not because they are mistakes or leftovers from an earlier world, but because they illuminate how wide evolution's search space really is. A jellyfish can have eyes without a brain like ours, and still steer through a mangrove maze. It can kill with cells that fire faster than most mechanical devices. It can light up the dark with chemistry that later becomes a tool for seeing inside living tissue. It can exist as a polyp and a medusa, 2 bodies, 1 genome, depending on what the ocean demands. And in at least one lineage, it can reverse development, stepping backward across its own life cycle when the environment turns hostile. When we try to describe these animals, we keep reaching for the language of exceptions: immortal, alien, primitive, bizarre. But the ocean has never cared what we consider typical, or it selects for what works under pressure, darkness, dilution, and constant motion. The quiet truth is that jellyfish are not outside the rules of biology. They are the rules, written in a different dialect, one that prioritizes plasticity over permanence, chemistry over bone, and distributed control over centralized command. And even now, with genomes sequenced and stinging cells imaged in exquisite detail, vast parts of their story remain out of reach. We still don't fully understand what ecological cues tell a polyp to release a medusa, or why blooms surge in one year and vanish the next. We don't yet have a complete map from genes to rejuvenation in Turritopsis dohrnii, or know how often life cycle reversal happens in the wild compared to laboratory conditions. We can measure light emitted from a jelly, but we cannot always say what that light means to the animal that makes it, or to the predator that sees it. Jellyfish drift through a planet-sized experiment that has been running for hundreds of millions of years, in an environment we still explore like strangers. They remind us that complexity is not the same as familiarity, and that the ocean's most successful designs are sometimes the ones that barely seem to have a design at all.